I'm really happy to be here tonight with all of you. I say tonight because it's 7:40 for me here in Ontario, Canada. And I'm looking forward to the discussion and the interaction piece with the group, because normally, if you do a keynote or you do a live cast or a webinar, it's more didactic in one way. So I really encourage you to interact in the chat. Earlier, we talked about how Pam and I met, and at that Collective Wisdom for High Performing Women live cast, the chat was just lighting up. I didn't have a chance to read it until after. And it was amazing, the connections that were made through that hour that we had together. And what I learned was that many women, and it was a global audience similar to this, were having similar experiences and feeling very alone and wanting to connect. And so that's how Pam and I think you reached out to me, or we reached out to each other, and we started a conversation almost a year ago. And I'm hoping the same for you. You may meet someone in your breakout group that becomes a really integral part of your network. So I really encourage you to step into that opportunity tonight, or this afternoon, or this evening, wherever you are.
Thanks, Cranla. So let's kick it off with the question: why do you believe that emotional intelligence is so important for us as leaders in our families, communities, and workplaces at this particular point in time?
Yes, this is a great question to start with, and I'm very passionate about helping people to develop a knowledge base of what's being called emotion science, particularly during these times. And whether you're here for personal learning or your own, so professional learning, the folks from Napoleon were coming as a group and looking for this as a professional development opportunity. I really hope you have some key takeaways that resonate for you. And the beauty of this sort of intimate gathering is that Pam will offer some information that allows us to connect after the fact. So I look forward to that as well. So this I see as the beginning of a conversation. So Pam, in your question, you mentioned at this point in time, and we're all under pressure in our own ways, in the lives that we're living right now. And for some, these have been exceedingly stressful times. Living in uncertainty, I think, I don't know if folks know this, those of you not in Ontario, we took a few steps back towards lockdown. So we have increased restrictions here. And so for some folks, that's become, lonely and isolating and had a significant impact on mental health again. All of our circumstances may be different, but what is similar is that we're all experiencing a myriad of emotions. They're cyclical with whatever comes. And for some people, I got a note today, someone very close to me lost a family member to COVID. So that's the unpredictability of where we're living and the times that we're living in. Some people have had their financial situations impacted. For 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks off the top of the new year, schools were closed again here in Ontario. So I looked around, my children are grown. I looked around at my neighbors who have 2 and 3 kids, and they're back to homeschooling. So this creates a lot of stress for people, a lot of pressure. And there's some of us who've been working on the front lines. I've been working from home for the past 2 years. But there are people who've consistently been working on the front lines for 2 years in the midst of a global pandemic. So that brings emotion with it. And our normal routines have been completely upended. And so, yes, we're all going to have feelings about these circumstances. We're emotional and social beings. And right now, we're not living what we're used to living. The regular, familiar ways that we used to live have been impacted. So looking at emotions at this time, whether in a professional perspective or a professional perspective, is really, really important.
Thanks, Cranla. I'll just share what a couple of people have put in the chat here. Why is it important? So we can meet others where they are, emotionally, intellectually, or otherwise. To elevate the love factor, EI to support each other deeper and more meaningfully. So thank you both, Carolyn and Roxanne, for those contributions. Really appreciate that.
Yes, great points.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So a number of definitions for EI exist in the literature, Cranla, but how do you define emotional intelligence?
Yeah, so one of the things I really want us to anchor on, and I'll get to the definition in a minute, I would like us to just have a common understanding and agreement that emotions drive behavior. That's the other reason that we're talking about emotions tonight. An emotion comes before thought. Every single experience that we have as a human being has an emotion underneath it, whether we realize that or not. And many people believe, that whole Descartes philosophical principle of I think, therefore I am. And as human beings, actually, it's I feel, therefore I am. And when we understand how emotions are made, then we're better able to understand how to manage them in ways that preserve and feed our emotional and physical health and create better outcomes. And so, I just wanted to sort of go back to that point of why are we talking about it now? And I will get to the definition from a leadership perspective, because there are some people here who are leaders, and that's a really interesting point for them. Leaders are people first. And leadership is about harnessing human energy to facilitate meaningful change. There's a lot of standard definitions of leadership about influence, et cetera, et cetera. I really believe it's about working with people to create change towards a common purpose. And emotional intelligence for leaders dates back to studies from the early 90s. Someone had mentioned Dan Goleman's book. He actually wrote a book probably 10 years after, 10 years after the original discussions about emotional intelligence were starting to occur. And today, emotional intelligence is the #1 foundational skill for leaders. It's really core to success. Leaders can no longer rely on their smarts and their technical abilities in their area of specialization. They need to be well-versed in interpersonal skills and social skills to survive and thrive and lead their teams. And so this involves, as we move towards the definition, this involves first and foremost developing self-awareness, learning to manage your emotions, which is also known in some of the literature as self-regulation. So you can choose the most helpful behavior for your situation. And then building emotional connection as a leader is really important. This is deeply rooted in empathy, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And that's what allows the work that needs to get done by the team. And then finally, what I call personal leadership. You can have personal leadership even in a professional role, but for me, it means that the individual knows better. So then they do better by holding themselves like fiercely accountable for how they show up. There's no blaming, there's no abdicating responsibility. They're taking it on and they're aligning their intentions as a leader with the actual impact that others experience. So the traditional definition of emotional intelligence is recognizing, understanding, and managing our own emotions, and recognizing, understanding, and influencing the emotions of others. I would add choosing the behavior that you need in order to have the desired impact that you want to have in that situation. And when I often talk about emotional intelligence, people start off by thinking it means you don't have emotions. So emotional intelligence is not cutting off from or shutting down your emotional experiences. There's a whole movement, in Stoicism, which I've also studied through philosophy, and that's emerging again here in the 2020s. I'm not talking about that. EI is about being aware of and recognizing your emotional experiences and actually owning them, examining them, unpacking them. And then looking at the way you would typically behave related to that specific emotion. And then starting to build the skills and strategies you need to make thoughtful, intentional choices about how you show up instead of just defaulting into habitual ways of reacting. So that would be my expanded definition.
I mean, which is great, and I love this bit about the pieces that you've added. But ultimately, it's like I really believe, and you've said this so well, is that leadership starts with I, right? I mean, you can't be a good leader if you don't understand yourself and you haven't got your own stuff together, right? And I think you so well articulately mentioned that, and so thank you for that. And I'm just going to share what a couple of other people have said. Miley Munoz says EI is to express one's own emotions in a way people can relate to and build a professional relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And Alex Salama said, we will not survive if we only rely on technical skills and IQ to drive how we make decisions and how we are with others. I think the point you made about connection and Alex is making here is so huge, particularly now, because people are really experiencing such a lack of connection due to COVID, right?
Yes,
I think some of us that didn't realize that we needed it so much are realizing that it's kind of a number one thing that we need in our lives, whereas
yes.
we didn't realize how important it was until something like the pandemic hit us.
Absolutely.
And
there was another comment I loved: if you don't manage your emotions, they will manage you. And that was from Jane. I love that. Absolutely.
Great. So I'm just looking here. This next question, we're going to throw right out to the audience. So feel free if you want to, it's probably easiest because there's a fair number of folks here. If you want to raise your hand to actually use the reaction button at the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and then I'll see you'll come to the fore, because if I've got two screens, I can't see everybody. And if you want to put stuff in the chat, that's fine too. So we welcome your initial input into this question. How does emotional intelligence show up in our personal lives? Anybody? Give you a moment to think about it. Lorene.
Thanks. I love this topic. I actually have studied emotions as well through yoga, which for a long time kind of had this, oh, yoga doesn't include emotions, but it actually does. At least now the new version does. So for me, it shows up a lot in my relationships that are most intimate, my partner, my children. And for me, it's about being able to respond rather than to react.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's my personal life. And then, of course, those relationships, business, work, it's all relationships. It's all connection. So if I can't understand where I'm coming from, then I am not able to connect and respond. That's my answer.
Great. Thank you, Lorene.
Thank you, Lorene.
Somebody else. Susan.
How emotional intelligence shows up every day for me is owning my own stuff, owning my own emotions. And I get wonderful practice with my husband, especially because we have given each other permission to get in each other's faces and say, you're not owning your stuff. And to stand there, feel like I'm going to throw up, because in that particular moment, I'm not owning my emotions. I'm not owning and taking responsibility. And I feel sick to my stomach. And the promise is that I stand there, not walk out, not want to be right, feel sick, and own it. Own me, show up 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And that practice over 31 years of being together allows me to be in my work environments and be able to stand there and help someone see their emotions, see their behavior toward another workmate. Because I'm sort of the emotional intelligence coordinator in the dental practice I work in. It's something I do well, and I'm willing to help. And to stand there and eye-to-eye contact, help someone own, but not go, you have to own your stuff. I mean, I can say that to my husband, but not to other people. So that's how it shows up for me, is that spillover of helping other people in a kind and loving way, and stand there with in my own personal life when I really just want to throw up and walk away and be right instead of happy.
Lovely.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Susan. I just wanted to also acknowledge that beautiful what should I say, pendant that Susan has on. She creates these and teaches people to create these beautiful pieces of jewelry out of
Oh,
glass.
wow.
Quite lovely, Susan.
Spectacular.
Yeah. Asma, I understand you had your hand, it's sort of hidden in your plant.
It's all good. I'll do this next time. For me, emotional intelligence shows up in my personal life, I'll say, when I have to sit with the emotion and not judge it, like just really sit with it, witness it, and allow it, like really it's like having a conversation with it and see what it's trying to tell me and go from there. And so I'm really taking it as like a goal and an improvement and a learning for me every day to not let the emotion become my own identity, but just let it just go through and just learn from it. So that's what I was there. So it's fun when I'm journaling, I could say.
Thanks for that, Asma. Carolyn, did you have something to share? And then I'll take Nessa.
I really do. And, this has happened to me since the pandemic. Is relationships, all of my relationships have changed. And I feel that this emotional intelligence that I've had the time to learn about myself is that I am the witness to my relationships, to the mirror of who they are. And, it's fascinating to me, the reactions people have, and then I can be completely separate and detached and just witness it and not get hooked in to the whole negative energy and everything that happens with that I can witness it and still have my ground. I mean, it's extraordinary to me to be, in this position of emotional intelligence and not get carried away by the negativity. Like it's extraordinary. I feel so blessed. I do. And so I love emotional intelligence. So I'm super happy about being here too.
I can tell, I can feel your passion around it, Carolyn.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carolyn.
And is it Anessa? Yes, Anessa.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. And Carolyn, I can feel your energy. And I'm in BC and we're going through this device, so it must be pretty profound. It's a wonderful question. How EI shows up for me in my day-to-day. I can set aside my own experiences, my values and beliefs, and step into someone else's without taking ownership of that.
Mm-hmm.
So perspective taking in my work is so important, that I step out of my experience into someone else's so I can see how change needs to happen for them. The other way it shows up is I have revolutionized my accountability. When something's not going well for me, whether it's work or at home, I always look in first. And that hasn't been my history, but getting older, I've learned to do that, and it's been a blessing. But I ask myself, what did I bring to this? What was my intention? What did I miss? What didn't I ask? What was important to them? So
yeah, those are awesome skills, Anessa. Absolutely. That's the right track for sure.
Well, I'm trying, right? And I think through this mechanism, for me, it's about just showing up unarmored, to steal Brene Brown's word.
Yes, I was going to
say, I just want to be myself, and I want other people to feel that they can be that with me in my work and in my home. And as women, we need all the support we can get right now. Is a particularly pivotal and crucial time because so many of us are in career flux.
Very good points, Anessa.
I'd love to just chime in on that point, because I loved how you say you want to show up as yourself. I also heard you talk about accountability, because I coach a lot of women and they want to just show up as themselves, but they don't really want the accountability. Do you know what I mean? So it's that whole idea of aligning your intention with that impact that you want to have. and being responsible for how you're choosing to show up. And somebody had put, I didn't read the whole thing, it was something about no drama, I think.
Lorene,
So much less,
drama.
thank you, Lorene, so much less drama. Exactly. When you are, as Carolyn's saying, standing back, detaching from your triggers, you're being an observer or a witness to what's happening. And I'm going to show you, I wasn't going to really go into slides, but I have 2 slides that I'm going to show because I love to talk about the brain science behind emotions. Not everybody understands how emotions are made. And so if we can talk about that a little bit, Pam, you tell me when it would be appropriate to do that. I think that will be helpful too.
Okay, I'm just, let's finish up this question of how does EI show up in our professional lives? We talked about our personal lives. Now, maybe do you want to say a little bit about our professional lives, and then I'll also invite a couple of other people to share how they see it showing up in their professional lives.
Sorry, you'd like me to
You want to just kick it off just briefly, and then we'll open it up so people
Sure.
can.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is huge. We have a half an hour left. I mean, workplaces can be very energizing sources of inspiration. They can also be very emotionally challenging. If you think about work, you know, we're all pulled together into teams with people who may have very different belief systems from us and different habits and different values from our own. And yet we need to, and we're expected to get along with them and co-create with them and produce results with them. So it's really important that people start looking, and I loved the whole train of accountability. So for me, emotional intelligence starts with self-awareness and social awareness, right? Reflecting, assessing, that's what people have been talking about. Knowing our own strengths, our weaknesses, our capabilities. I'd say our blind spots, because not everybody understands how they're showing up and the impact that they're bringing to a particular situation. So that's really important. And one of the key drivers of our behavior are our emotional and psychological needs. So we all have different needs. I can tell you mine when I look at, you know, David Rock's SCARF model, which is looking at status, certainty, affinity, autonomy, relationship, and fairness. I have a huge driver around fairness and justice. And if I feel like someone is impacting that, or somebody at work is treating someone else unfairly, that's a trigger for me. I'm aware of that. I know I'm heightened. And so we'll talk a little bit more about strategies, you know, when we get to that discussion. But being self-aware is really the first building block. And then we can look at that emotional regulation piece, because if I allow myself to trigger, I have a large section of the company that reports into me, they're going to be triggered too, because emotions are contagious. So if one team member is expressing frustration or anger or anxiety of some sort, it's going to spread through the team. So emotional management is a key master skill of emotional intelligence. And then I'd offer one other thing. Someone was talking about the questions that they ask themselves. When I talk about the brain science, I'll share a little bit about why this is important. But curiosity helps us to stay open to possibilities, right? It helps us to tap into creativity and problem solving with others. So if we just rely on our assumptions and our biases and the stories that get created, we're not building relationship. Lorene, I believe, talked about relationship. We're not moving the team. We're not moving the project forward. So to suspend judgment and ask questions versus consistently telling other people what to do, that really builds respect and that collaborative connection. And those relationships and the conversations that need to happen, those are the vehicles by which the work gets done. So I'd say, you know, asking and listening combined with asking combined with listening, that leads to that sense of greater engagement, creativity, and innovation. And for those who are coming from Napoleon, this is something that we can talk more about after this session, if you like, or we can figure out how to get you what you need that's specific to the leadership capabilities you're wanting to bring. But I would say I'm on a real tear this year around leadership listening. That is critical. That's important for our personal lives. It's also important for our professional lives.
Thanks, Cranla. I'd like to take Teresa. Teresa had had a response to how does EI show up in our professional lives.
Thank you, Pamela. This is fascinating. Thank you so much, Dr. Warren. What I have learned recently, and I'm still a learner, student in it, I would say for myself, is when something happens, I try and sit in the moment afterwards and actually let that emotion come up, because I think I was moving at such a fast pace that I would sort of move on to the next thing, move on to the next thing. Or if I felt uncertain about it, I would express it to someone else in a way that I knew they would reflect back what I needed to hear. It was all prime BS, really. So what I'm trying to do now, learning to do, God, I'm 50 what, and I'm learning this now, but just to sit in that emotion. And, you know, even the other day I had a meeting and it was on Zoom, and I just felt like it didn't go as well as it should have. Anyway, we finished the meeting, I got the business, my team was upstairs, and I thought, I'm not going to go there yet because I need to sit in it. And I thought to myself, and then I went through what would I have done differently if I could go back an hour and a half. And I realized that I would have actually said, I don't have the relevant information to go forward. But I really could have, the old me would have gone upstairs and said, we got it. And everyone would have high-fived. And oh, it's so great. The truth is, I could have done better. I know I could have done better. And I was lucky to have got it, really. So reflective experience, I think, is what I'm learning.
And I'll add to that, what I'm hearing, Teresa, is a real sense of vulnerability, because you have to embrace vulnerability to be able to sit in it, because emotions can be scary. Okay. And just based on what you're sharing, I will recommend a book called Permission to Feel. Okay. It's by Dr. Mark Brackett, and he heads up the Yale Institute for Emotional Intelligence. And the reason that I'm recommending this book, we don't have the time to go into all the details today, but one of the things I've talked to Pam about is I'm a real advocate of emotional literacy. And the example I was going to give around, you know, personal emotional intelligence is my grandson, who's 3, who also already can identify when he's frustrated and sad. And my daughter will say, you have big emotions, Cairo. Like, he has emotional literacy at 3. Most of us didn't learn that. And so it's really important to be able to identify what you're feeling and attach it to a name. And sometimes you can write that down. That's a part of that acceptance that you're talking about and the sitting in it versus the rejection. The pain comes when we're trying to reject what we're feeling. But when we just can sit and understand, emotions are, we cannot not have emotions. We can choose behaviors. We can choose to not do a behavior, but we cannot not have emotions. And I know that's a double negative, and I'm sharing that on purpose. So we need to be able to just embrace it, the yuckiness, the grind of it. And I love your example for that, because it does take practice, and everybody's going to have their own way of practicing that acceptance versus that rejection of what they're feeling.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. We'll take one more. I think Jennifer, I think you have your hand up there. Did you want to share?
Yeah, I would love to. So yeah, my name's Jennifer. I'm from Kelowna, BC. I just thought I'd share, I guess, how emotional intelligence comes up for me in my professional life, and kind of being, I guess, still falling into the young professional category. It's something I definitely have an opportunity to work on, but I find it comes up for me quite often when I'm asked to give feedback to the variety of colleagues that I work with. Often those who are, you know, a lot more tenured in their careers, and maybe I've had to, you know, provide constructive feedback, or just if a situation hasn't gone well and we maybe could work better together in the future. So I tried as much as possible to be aware of maybe where they're coming from, you know, to have that come across in the right way, so that I'm not, you know, stepping on toes or hurting feelings or speaking out of turn or whatever. So I've tried to be really cognizant of the other person and what they might be thinking and feeling in those moments.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, you got it.
There are more hands, but I really feel a need to go on because move on. So my apologies if you wanted to, Jacqueline, put your thought in the chat, and then we'll be able to capture it later anyway. So thank you. I'm really appreciating all the engagement. It's awesome. So Cranla, one of the questions we were going to address was what strategies have you found most helpful in managing your emotions? So possibly this would be, before we throw that one out, it might be useful to show your slides. What do you think? Will that, does that?
I would love to. Am I able
Okay.
to share? Is the share enabled for me? Yes, it
Yes,
is.
it should
Look
be
at that.
fine. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So I wanted to just quickly go over, when we're talking about emotional intelligence, what are the skills and the competencies that we're talking about? And I didn't want to do that until we had an opportunity to hear from people, because now you're going to recognize the things that you're already doing well. And maybe you're going to pick up a couple of things that didn't occur to you that you can add to your repertoire. So I break down emotional intelligence competencies into personal competence and then social competence. So the first part we talked about a little bit, self-awareness, being aware of your emotions. We just had a great conversation with Teresa around that. What are your personal strengths and weaknesses? Understanding your own emotional drivers and psychological needs, because it's when we feel that our boundaries have been breached on the things that are important to us, that is when our brain triggers. When we feel like we are under threat or at risk of losing something, that is when our brain triggers. And that is how emotions are made. We have an emotional experience. And we talked with Teresa about the courage to be vulnerable. When we start talking about self-management, emotional regulation, that's this next section we're going to talk about, which is, what do you do? What are some helpful tools? Adaptability and flexibility, especially during these times. I mean, we started off talking about why is EI important now? That was the piece of Pamela's question that I picked up on, was the now. We all have to pivot. You know, today I can go see my neighbor, tomorrow there's going to be a lockdown. I have to be adaptable and flexible. I cannot be triggering every time that I'm not able to live my quote unquote normal life. Optimism and gratitude, I didn't add gratitude here, but they are very powerful tools for your brain chemistry. Because if you're practicing and sitting in gratitude, and if you have an optimism practice around looking to the future, people talk about a future self or building vision boards. There's something that happens in your brain chemistry. You cannot feel anger and frustration and gratitude at the same time. It's neurochemically impossible. So you're going to want to sit in gratitude, figure out what your gratitude anchor is. And I know we don't have tons of time on this. And then looking at personal drive. Let me go to the next slide. And then interpersonal awareness, insight, empathy. We've talked about empathy a little bit, and we may have time to discuss that a little bit more. Gratitude and appreciation of yourself. Start with yourself. We as women are not great at this. I have to tell you, I coach a lot of women. We are not great at self-compassion, appreciation, and gratitude. Someone talked about understanding the perspectives and emotions and strengths and weaknesses of the other person. That's a critical piece of empathy. And then relationship management, building that emotional connection. This is critical to leadership, by the way. Do you ask anybody on my team the kind of connection we have, they will say, I know them personally. I know they like to garden. I know their children's names. I know who they are as a human being, and they know who I am. I don't put up a wall and a barrier. Respecting others, managing conflict when it arises, not allowing it to be the poison that percolates under the surface, and leveraging diversity. So the slide I really wanted to talk about is this. And Gail Treese, who said she was the person who said she follows me, she has gone through our program, so she will recognize this slide. But this is really important because we are all hardwired in the same way. So the first part of the brain that I want to talk about is the neocortex, and that is the cognitive part of our brain. I like to say, you know, think of the neocortex with a top hat and tails. It's sophisticated. This is where our IQ resides. This is where we can do math and we can analyze and make decisions, and we can process information really quickly. And the really important part about the neocortex is it has the capability of holding 6 to 7 like bytes of information in many, many, many permutations. So it holds a lot of options for us. So when we are having the neocortex in the driver's seat, life's good. If you think about it, driving, we get to a stoplight, it knows to stop. It knows to turn left, it knows to turn right. We also have a part of our brain called the amygdala. And that resides in our limbic system, which is the emotional part of our brain. And the amygdala is really important for our survival. It's very primitive. So when we were hunters and gatherers and something would come out of the jungle, our amygdala would trigger to help us run and stay safe. So you've probably heard of the fight or flight response. We're going to turn around and try to shove a spear in it, or we're going to run as fast as we can. So the amygdala triggers based on fear, based on the need for survival, based on the need that we're under threat. And it doesn't need to be a real threat. It could be a perceived threat. And it's on all the time. It's just scanning for danger, scanning for danger, scanning for danger. And so the reason I wanted to share this is because we all have amygdalas, and our amygdalas trigger for different things. And someone's put the amygdala hijack. Yes, I tend to not use hijack anymore because I speak to international audiences, and it's actually a word that I've been given some feedback on. So I tend to talk about the amygdala will trigger when we are feeling under threat or under siege. And so what we want to do in emotional intelligence is to engage behaviors. We've talked about some beautiful things, the stepping back, the being a witness, that gives us time to respond versus react. And that's, I think, the part we're going into now, Pam, which is your question around what are some of the strategies. So I want people to think about what are some of the strategies where you can soothe your amygdala so the neocortex can quite happily get back into the driver's seat.
So further to that, the question for the group is, what strategies have you all found most useful in managing your emotions? Anybody brave soul want to take that one on?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I do deep breathing because that's something that's more like immediate. But like my overall go-to is nature. I try my best to be grounded and to center myself in nature. It helps me clear my mind and just get realigned and not react based on emotion. I get to process and then decide what to do from there.
Thank you. I'm just looking. Is that Jamie? Was that Jamie or who?
Yeah. Yep, Jamie.
Jamie. Nature is so therapeutic. I need to have my nature walk every day. This is like just calms me right down and grounds me. There's a few others. Okay, I don't know who was first, so I'll go with Lorraine. Lorraine, your name is first up on the list, so I'll go with you, and then I'll take Jane, and then Donna.
Thanks. Well, I wanted to say that deep breathing has been my go-to, and nature as well. But something I've done even in the office, and I want to normalize it, is tapping. So I'm no tapping expert by any means, but I took it on as a practice. And so when somebody would really trigger me on the phone, I would start tapping in the office and just calm my nervous system down. So I'm telling you that so you'll all do it too, so I won't look so weird in my office alone doing this thing.
Thanks, Lorraine.
That's why we used to have like offices in with other people, you know?
Jane, do you want to share?
Sure. What I've found really helpful as a long-term strategy is meditation. And what they've found, I mean, they've done research with Buddhist monks, expert meditators, and the amygdala actually shrinks. It becomes smaller through meditation. So again, that's like a longer term strategy. The deep breathing in nature, I love as well. But I found that meditation to be extremely effective.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, since I've meditated since about 2013, it's made a huge difference in my life as well. Just start your day instead of hitting the ground running, just like, oh, grounded and feeling good. Donna.
Wow, these are all so good, and all of which I practice. And hands up for the tapping. I do it, I teach it, I love it.
taking meditation and shrinking it down when it's a real immediate trigger is I have my kind of 10 for any situation affirmations that are quite short single sentences that I just kind of in my head, if I can say it out loud, I say it out loud, and in my head, I'm going through them. And the greatest lesson I was ever given by one of my great mentors was just smile. But before you pick up the phone, if you know you're going to be having an awkward conversation, smile. Before you answer back, smile. It de-triggers the amygdala because you're not in shame, blame, guilt, or fear. You're in joy. The brain doesn't know the difference. That's it. Smile.
Thanks, Donna. Abigail, and then Carolyn, and then we probably need to move on.
Right. Thank you. Everything, I just want to echo everything that has been said, that the breathing, nature, and meditation. And for me, it's really, really have been the magical thing for dealing with my emotions and also coming back to the body. And really, you mentioned meditation is more long-term, but I think also short-term is just really coming back to the body and noticing the sensations and noticing how it arises and kind of disappears, and noticing how what part of my body feels that emotion. Because sometimes I notice for me, the emotion is there, but it's really just in my mind. And when I'm like, okay, what part of my body am I feeling this emotion? It disappears. So I'm like, oh, so it's really just my perception of the situation that it's my mind that's like clouding the whole experience. So for me, my strategy is really like coming back to my breath and then coming back to my body and kind of dissecting that emotion and see, can I locate it in my throat, my chest, my gut? If I can't locate it, then okay, it's my mind, it's my imagination. Thank you.
Thanks, Abigail. Carolyn.
Okay, so I call in my support team. I have my women who love me, and I say, okay, this is taking me on a path that I want to go, and they're available immediately. I have 4 women that I have, and I call them and I say, okay, off track, and I can talk to them for 3 to 4 minutes and get back in the path. So I just really dump and then look at the truth and then let it go and move on. I mean, it can happen so fast, and I'm so thankful for my support team.
Well, it's great to have
Beautiful.
support teams, and a lot of us don't reach out enough. So good on you, Carolyn. Good on you. I just wanted to share a couple things from the chat. Julie says, I do mindset work every morning, listening to positive audio messages. Les Brown is one of my faves. Thanks, Julie. And sometimes, Michelle says, sometimes it's as simple as taking a drink of water or saying something to create a little delay in stressful moments to buy me some time to settle. Yeah. And France has said a number of things: arts, music, crafts. Yeah, doing creative things. Breathing. Breathing, Deb, and a few other people. And then Teresa says pausing before responding. Great, great. Okay, then. I'm just looking at our time, and I want to make sure that we cover everything. Is there one thing, one key strategy that you'd like to add, Cranla, to what other people have shared before we move on to the next question?
I thank you for that invitation. I love what everybody is sharing, because if people do get the Permission to Feel book, they'll see that there is a process that Dr. Mark Brackett talks about called ruler. Lots of people have lots of different sort of processes, and they're based in neuroscience. And so what I'm hearing here is the first thing we need to do, and everybody pretty much said this in their own way, is to stop, to pause, to disengage from the situation that we're experiencing as a trigger. And that's actually scientifically called a pattern interrupt. And I don't mean, fleeing the scene, but just pulling yourself out of emotionally responding in that moment. And that will punctuate the neurocircuitry. It'll stop the system from the flood of cortisol and adrenaline that comes with the amygdala triggering. And so, once we've been able to disengage from that trigger, we'll re-engage later, but then the breathing would be the next step. And so many people talked about that so beautifully. Simple box breathing, if people don't know what that is, it's the deep belly breathing, 4 slow counts in, hold for 4 counts, out for 4 slow counts. That's usually how a lot of people start if they haven't sort of graduated to full-on meditative practice. And I'll just say, it's a very helpful response to stress or when you're feeling emotionally heightened or triggered, because it hacks into the nervous system and serves as a signal that there is no threat, that it can calm down. And shallow breathing is often what happens when we're triggered. And that's an indication that there is a threat and that we're going to have to fight or we're going to have to flee. So the deep breathing is a way to trick the system into saying there's no threat here, and it will start to calm itself down, and you won't have all the neurochemicals sort of starting to course through, and adrenaline, cortisol starting to course through the veins, because that's what the challenge is for us. And that's often what pushes us into the default behaviors that don't create the impact and the outcomes that we want to have. So I think everybody said some form of this, and I love that people are already finding their own way. The last thing I'll say, because I just believe in this so much, and someone was talking about questions before, and I said I'll talk about this a little bit later. Engage your brain in questions, because the neocortex and the amygdala love questions. The questions stimulate the neocortex and they soothe the amygdala, because then the amygdala doesn't feel like it's under threat when questions are being asked. So just ask yourself questions, and they don't have to be big, profound questions. It could be, is this a threat? Is it real? Am I only thinking it's a threat? Abigail was just saying that, the emotion is in my mind. You could ask, what's my goal here? What do I really want to have happen? And something that I practice is I call it the rule of sixes. I'll ask myself, will this matter in 6 months? Will this matter in 6 weeks? You start to count kind of down your sixes. Will this matter in 6 days, 6 hours, 6 minutes, 6 seconds? I don't have a lot that's going to matter 6 hours from now, to be very honest with you. And so when you realize that what you're experiencing in this moment shall pass, it also is very calming. And then your brain, again, we're back to, it wants to feel safe. It wants predictability. It wants to know that it's not under threat. And when I say threat, I don't mean somebody coming into your home to steal your belongings and harm you. It could be you're in a meeting, you've prepared to do a presentation, and somebody else in the meeting cuts you off. My amygdala triggers when that happens to me. So I'm sharing that because it's one of my triggers. So then I need to step back, I need to calm down. And then often I'll just say, I'd like to finish my sentence, please. But I try to do it in a way that's calm and not biting.
Thanks. Those are really helpful. I love that rule of sixes in particular. I'm going to start thinking to use it that way. Okay, now we just have a couple of minutes to really talk about empathy. And you highlighted on the front end, Cranla, about why it's really an important EI strategy, and why is it in general really important in leadership?
Yeah, so we only have a couple of minutes, as you said. So just so that we're all on the same page, the way that I define empathy, empathy is actually a triad. Not everybody talks about it in the same way. So empathy involves thoughts, feelings, and concern, the way that I approach empathy, especially as a leader. So we work to understand from the other person's perspective. We put ourselves in those shoes to feel as best we can what they might be feeling. And we have an intuition or a sense about what the other person may need from us. So, I have a big, bold vision that empathy can save the world. And underscoring empathy is caring and compassion. So from a leadership perspective, exceptional leaders will inspire and energize us to do great things because they practice empathy. They get into the minds and the hearts of those who they serve, and they listen. So they know how to support their team members, how to empower the team member to motivate themselves. And empathy is the key ingredient that builds trust and meaningful connection. And we've already talked about that is the vehicle through which the work gets done. These are the building blocks for the relationships and the conversations. So empathy in leaders, you know, the other thing in the literature, it's been tied to higher scores on engagement and innovation, and empathetic leaders foster an environment of inclusion and belonging, which is really, you know, being talked about a lot in the workplace right now. Work-life harmony, all leading to retention. So in summary, you know, empathy from us will foster empathy in others, and it builds strong, trusting relationships so that the work can get done. And I did that in a minute and a half.
Oh, I loved it. You're good on your feet there, Cranla. Here's the experience. Wow. Okay then, so Cranla, it's been awesome having you on here, and we're going to keep you to the end, obviously. But if people want to get in touch with you and learn a little bit more about your work at IHHP, how's the best way to do that? And
so I'm on LinkedIn, which is an easy way to find me. And Pam, do you send something out after the meeting? You can always provide my email address. I'm fine with that as well.
Sure.
But I have a lot of people that just reach out to me. Someone put there you go. They've put my LinkedIn.
Michelle put it there.
Thank you, Michelle.
Put the LinkedIn.
Yeah. I'm very easy to find. I'm the only Cranla in the world. It's very easy to find me. So just
well, you're very special, obviously.
Type my name in and you'll find me on LinkedIn.
Well, thanks very much for your time. It's been so energizing, and I wish we had another 3 hours, but we don't. So
thank you.
So now we're going to go into breakouts, and everyone, just so you know, Barb is going to help us put us technically into breakouts and debrief at the end. And we're going to you're going to be in groups of 3. And when you go into your group of 3, you'll have an opportunity to really quickly introduce yourself and then answer a couple of questions. And so I would ask people, because we have 10 minutes in the group. So 10 minutes, so you roughly have 3 minutes a person. I'd ask that you choose a timekeeper at the front end of the meeting, and the person with the longest hair goes first out of the 3 of you. And so I'm giving you a lot of stuff to set this up. So 10 minutes for the group, 3 minutes per person, 3 people, then you get a bit of time to come and go. And the questions are, what new ideas or understandings did you gain this evening from our featured guest? And how do you see applying what you've learned today in your work and in your life? Michelle, are you able to put those in the chat for us? What new ideas or understandings did you gain this evening from our featured guest? And how do you see applying what you've learned today in your life and in your work? Michelle's putting them in the there. So the other thing is to choose someone at the outside who may want to share some takeaways. We won't be able to have takeaways from every group, but some can share in the chat, some share, but we want to do a debrief on it. So have fun. So Barb.
Hey, wait, Pam, can you just make me co-host so I can have the breakout option?
Sorry about that, Barb. I thought you were.
Nope.
My apologies.
Okay.
There was a lot happening on the front end here.
Yes,
just a few people coming in.
Okay, so it's going to be about 10 minutes. All right. Okay. Let's see. Recreate. This isn't usually the way we set them up. So, yeah, I'm getting different sorry, everybody, I'm just getting different instructions on this than I usually do. So, let's see, that times that. Okay, about 5. Okay, there might be more than 3 people in your room. So just roll with it. There we go. We'll see you in 10 minutes.
Have fun.
There we go.
So what time are we got here? 5:30?
Yeah, I'll just put my thing on for 10 minutes. Yeah, that didn't give me the usual breakout instructions. So anyway, I put them in, there's 5 rooms of 5. So there's a few more than 3 people. So they'll have about 2 minutes each.
Okay, well, that's going to kind of mess them up, but anyway, hopefully not. Anyway, it'll be
well, I won't get into it at this moment.
No worries. That's fine. Yeah.
Well, no, it wasn't. There's something on your end when the breakout room system, the way we're doing it, because this isn't.
Okay.
Usually the host has different instructions, and that's all I'm going to say.
No worries.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I
How
was winging it.
Yeah, no worries. How do you see applying what you've learned today? Actually, what new ideas or understandings did you gain tonight?
Wow, all kinds of things. Yeah, she's a very knowledgeable woman. I loved it. Some of this I know, but great reminder. I love that you can't be angry and grateful at the same time.
It's true.
Yeah, so it's just not possible in your brain. So, and I love the strategies to soothe the amygdala. Like, I didn't realize that questions actually soothe it. Totally makes sense. And all the breathing and, pausing, I'm pretty good at that. I've done only because I've had so much practice with so many emotional people, and including myself. Yeah. So, how important it is for leaders, of course, to show up unarmored and curious. And it's about connection. That's good leaders are well connected to what their people, whether it's their team or their audience, what they care about, what they are connected to, and what they're curious about. And of course, the big thing we could all learn to do more of is listen. So yeah, those are my key ones. I do like empathy can save the world. I like that.
I love that too. Yeah. I really, as I mentioned when she was after she said that rule of 6s, like if you really think about that, right? If something you're really fired up about it and you really think about it, will this really matter in 6 months, 6 weeks, it just not only makes you pause and think, it really makes it all relative, right? Is this really something to get worried about, right? Or heated up about, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also, I liked her bit about the fact that leadership is really about harnessing human energy to create change toward a common goal. Like, because it used to be, it was like people, it was the command and control, the hierarchy. You got to the top and you were the one with the vision and told everybody else what to do. And people then, made slide decks to communicate to the groups, the plebs below, they were meant to be doing, rather than involving them in the process and finding out what the real issues were, and then trying to, get their ideas in terms of how to fix them, rather than just a bunch of senior managers sitting in a room and thinking, okay, what are we going to do next here? So yeah, I think, and the belonging and the connection, I think as well, I don't know about you, Barb, but I was raised to believe that work and home were separate. So you didn't want to have very close relationships at work. So that would then make you act like you might be different at work. You might have a different behavior or not be quite the same person as you were at home, because it was like you were not supposed to mix work and play or something. Which is totally an outdated, like if you look at Brene Brown and much of the leadership experts today, it's not about that. It's all about being authentic and being vulnerable, and how if you want to be effective, that's totally not the way I was raised. I don't know about you, but
no, I hear what you're saying. Different situation. I mean, my parents had a huge farm and so home business. So they weren't professionals who went to an office. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we weren't necessarily raised that way, that you couldn't be, well, mind you, they of course had a professional life in the meetings and associations and everything they were involved in, and so did we, the kids. But yeah, it wasn't as separate, I don't think. Like professional and personal, it was really be yourself and smile, seriously, no matter where you were and who you were talking to. Be kind, be respectful, smile, and be yourself. Actually, that was my training. But my mom was also quite highly emotionally intelligent. My dad, not so much. God love him. But I mean, you know, whether it's like a masculine, feminine thing. But my mom would ask a lot of questions rather than blaming. She would ask first. She would and she would pause. And she'd ask first, and she would say, "What happened?" Rather than say, "Okay, who did this?" Right. You know, 5 kids. You know, it's pretty easy to have a bit of chaos. Anyway, I had good training at home, I think. For like pausing, but then asking first before you blame. And I used that a lot in all of my careers, and people were like, in some ways, like surprised that I wouldn't blame anybody first. I would ask. Then you can say, okay, we need to do this differently. But you know, my sister has a good expression too, because she does all this conflict resolution and coaching families that are very stressed. And she says, you know, attack the issue, not the person.
Totally.
But a lot of people don't do that in my experience. They attack the person first, and then maybe they talk about the issue.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. But years ago, because I worked in psychiatry, it was you don't focus on the person, you focus on the behavior. And at certain points in time, you exhibit these behaviors, but that's not who you are.
Right.
You exactly. Those behaviors, but you're not a bad person just because you're doing that.
Right.
At the time, this is what's happening, right?
Yeah. Very similar example. Yeah, exactly. You're not your behavior.
Exactly. So how do you see applying, start this second question. How do you see applying what you've learned today in your work and in your life?
Well, again, just be a good listener, firstly, doing my best. And people actually point that out, that I am a really good listener, because I do my best to remain like quiet and witness what's happening and then respond rather than react. And so I use all those things. And how else could I apply it? Yeah, I love, again, this part about how you pause, breathe. I mean, I do this work and I teach this work, you know, heart coherence breathing and practicing gratitude. However, we can always definitely use it on ourselves, not just the people we're working with or teaching. So yeah, that I would just continue. For me, it's just continue to practice everything that Cranla has shared, and and how we can soothe ourselves first, and then soothe or connect and put ourselves in the other person's shoes.
Right.
So empathy. Anyway, how can you apply it, Pam? What would you say?
Yeah, no, very similar, but I guess I'd add that what I mentioned about that rule of 6. I'm interested in trying that because that's something new. And I, sometimes we get fired up about things, and then I think that will help me put things into perspective. I deep breathe and I, do a lot of preventive stuff as you do, grounding before you enter a tense or potentially stressful situation. So you're kind of ready, right, to handle it rather than hyper
exactly
frazzled mode, right? Because then you react rather than respond thoughtfully, right?
Right.
So I think, and I think just in terms of leadership, I think there's to me, it makes it a lot easier to be who you are all the time than to think you have to be somebody different in your place.
Right. Yeah.
Because then you are who you are, and then you just it's not a big thing. And for me, I've obviously I've been a consultant for a number of years, so it's like I'm always entering places. So I'm very genuine because I don't have the people don't know me from before, right? Unless they hire me back, then they'd hire me back. But it's not like I'm in an organizational culture. And it's interesting that you kind of feel like you have to be a certain way in that culture. And what's curious is maybe that's one of the reasons why I left being in a culture, and it became a consultant, so then I could just be me, just go in and see all the issues and the problems, because they would jump out at me. And if you're young and you're in an organization, the first thing you do is you see all the problems and they just start to talk about them. They're thinking, who the heck are you? You're like, you don't have an experience. What are you highlighting all these points for? We might be able to do this. Why the hell what do you have to say about it, right? So yeah,
right.
so
Well,
it's 10 minutes, so yeah.
Well, it's 5:45. Do you want to give them a little more time, or do you want me to call them back? Because then we still debrief, right?
Yeah, I think we need to bring them back. What do you think?
Yeah. Yep. I'll close the rooms, and that'll give everybody a, it'll say 60 seconds to close.
Sure, okay.
So they'll be back. I'll be back in a minute.
Thanks, Barb.
Yeah, there we go. It's Mercury retrograde, technology. No, I'm serious. All kinds of things have happened this week for me and other people.
Well, we just launched the website. Tell me about how many tests I did before and after and continue to do.
That's what I mean. You just got to run. You got to flow with the tech.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. All right. Why is nobody coming back? This is not, I closed the rooms.
I wonder if
oh no, they're still counting down. It says they'll close in 10 seconds.
That's all right. I would suggest you do it for, I'm just trying to think. Alex left, she's sick. And so fortunately I have the slides, so I'm going to do that part of the presentations. So I would say give 5 minutes of debrief probably.
Okay,
welcome back, everybody.
That was delicious.
Great. Sorry, the rooms were bigger than 3 people. I was just saying to Pam, it's Mercury retrograde. I don't know if any of you follow that. It's technology, and it's been happening to me and other people. So it's not just me. And it's like, oh, so it's always like, okay, let's just roll with it and see what happens. Anyway, we'll just wait till everyone's back, and I think they are. So I just would like to do a quick debrief with everyone. And again, if one person in your group could share new insights and how can you apply this in your work or life? Who would like to start? Anybody? And remember to unmute yourself. Anybody?
May I ask Cranla to repeat what she just shared with our breakout, because it was so good about being on the edge of heart and confidence. I'm sorry, will you repeat what you just shared? That was so good.
So someone in our group, thank you, Julie. Someone in our group was talking about, having too much empathy, and people may take advantage of that, or they may think you're soft and you're weak. And emotional intelligence isn't just about empathy or soft emotions. It's a balance of heart and edge. And you can have both when you're really clear on your values. So if you step outside of your values, you start to feel pain. Or if someone's encroaching on your boundaries, you start to feel pain. And those might be places where you have to have some edge and hold up a boundary and say no to something, even if it's scary, even if it feels like you're going to lose something. So EI, again, this isn't in a book, but this is how I teach it in the work that I do with women. It's really about heart and edge and balancing the two.
Okay, great. Actually, Cranla, because this is really important, Teresa just asked if you could give a quick example of that.
Yeah, so in a leadership role, I love my team. We get along well. But sometimes I might have to say, no, you can't have that particular vacation time off because we have a company meeting booked, because somebody else may need to already booked that time off, so it's really about, I have empathy for the fact that you want to go and take your vacation at that time. And I think that's great. And it's not going to be, this isn't a good time for you to go. I'm just trying to think on my feet here as a simple kind of leadership example.
No, that's
does that help, Teresa?
Yeah. And Julie also reinforced that edge is confidence and boundaries. So I think you gave a great example, but still having a heart, you know, understanding where that person is coming from. Okay, great. That's a great.
You're not, EI isn't meaning you're a doormat.
Or a
It's not meaning
pushover.
you're a doormat. You're not a pushover. You're not easy to manipulate. That's not what emotional intelligence is. It's really about accountability for how you show up. And sometimes it's going to be with a great deal of heart and care and compassion. And sometimes it's going to be with a boundary that somebody may not like.
There you go. Right. Did you want to say something, Carolyn? You're over there.
I really did. I mean, this stuff is so good. Like, we're going to have such a good sleep because we're so much wiser. Honestly, Cranla, you are a smart cookie. And I really acknowledge you for your heart, your soul, and your contribution here. You're a very good woman. Good things are going to happen to you in your life. Just saying. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Carolyn.
No, it's the truth. Because we need this wisdom to be the leaders that we are meant to be here, to serve the world, to serve more people. And what you're saying here, I absolutely love it. It's this balance of heart and edge. And it's when you're working in partnership too. It's not just with employees. It's what, like, I work with a partner in my business, and she pushes against my value of respect. And, you know, for the longest time, I didn't say anything, and I just bit it until I just knew I had to have a voice. I need to speak my truth. And that's exactly what you're talking about. So it's an edge. Yep. And it's heart. Yes. And, you know, she had all her reactions about all that stuff, but I stayed centered and grounded in my own truth, and she heard me, and things are getting better. So I just want to say that I really think that that's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that example.
And great answer to the question, how can you apply this in your own work and life?
Yes, that's a great example.
Beautiful. Anyone else like to share? I just want to pay attention to the time. I'm just going to share. I love that empathy can save the world. I like that. and what you just mentioned, heart and edge. But I love the whole, how you can actually soothe your amygdala too. Because, you know, many of us know, you know, it's the fear alert. But I love asking questions, you know, the breathing, all the things that soothe the amygdala. Okay, Anessa, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
I know that we're on a time crunch, so I just want to be really brief. But Dr. Warren, I'm so glad that you were here tonight, and I'm super grateful that you took this opportunity to just share all of your immense knowledge with us. I'm sending love to you from BC just for opening my mind. But my comment is about values. If we have heart and edge in this continuum, then our values are the lever, right? And so for me, I need to really know what my values are if I want to be able to move between heart and edge. And I find with women, we really struggle in understanding what our values are, internal and external to us. And so understanding what's, like you said, fairness is a value that is a lever for you to move from edge to heart, right? For me, honesty is a tremendous lever. And if I feel like that is in tandem and not being displayed in transparency, I am highly triggered, and it really affects my ability to move from heart to edge. So I think what I'm hearing from you is it's really good that I know that, and I need to help my clients find their values.
Absolutely. Yes. Thanks, Anessa.
Beautiful. Thanks, Anessa, for sharing that. Okay, Pam, I'm going to hand it over to you because I know you've got a few things to share before we wrap up.
Okay, then. Thanks, Barb. Appreciate it. I'll just read a couple of things, from the chat. I agree, Anessa, on the importance of understanding and knowing our values, which can serve as our framework and compass for figuring out what really matters to us and how to move forward. Abigail, thanks for the emotional app link. Anessa put an emotional app link here in. No, Asma put the link in. So it's in the chat. And if you want to save the chat at the end, you know, it's the 3 dots at the bottom, and then you just click on them for save, and then you'll get the chat, just so you know. Yeah, okay. Thanks very much, Barb, and everybody for your active participation in the breakout. Sounds like you got you had a really rich discussion, that's what we always want. So awesome. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share a little bit about becoming a member of Female Wave of Change Canada, and what we're on about, and some of the benefits of membership. Okay, so I got to share my screen here. People see this?
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. So, we are a diverse and welcoming community of women committed to strengthening feminine leadership and leading change toward a better world. As I mentioned at the outset, we are part of a global social movement, and they are at femalewaveofchange.com, now in almost 50 countries. And our core values that are central to who we are at Female Wave of Change Canada are authentic feminine leadership, partnership and collaboration, gender equality, embracing diversity, interconnectedness, and sustainability. And just so you know, we actually went live with our brand new website on Monday. And so you'll see our mission, vision, and values on the site. It's the same URL, but yes, and I'll share that in a few minutes. So we encourage people to join us as change makers, and we actually have 5 pillars at the international level, and they are economy, education, environment, humanity, and health and wellness. And there's 5 pillar teams at the international level, and these 5 pillar teams came out of a document I helped write, and it was called Accelerating Change, Reshaping the Future, Accelerating Change for a Better World. And we sent it to leaders around the world at various levels in May and June of 2020. And so what my vision is for Female Wave of Change Canada, as my role is to really spread the community across Canada and connect us also to the international group, is to create 5 pods in these areas. And to date, we actually, and we're going to create projects, initiatives, webinars, and such like. And the first project, and some of the folks who are on here now who are members, that we co-created together since the end of June, is called the Mother Earth Ambassador Program. And it's obviously around the environment pillar, if you will. And it's a program for girls aged 9 to 12, an experiential learning program to teach them about Mother Earth and how to become ambassadors in their families, their schools, and communities. So that's an example of something that we're doing, and we hope to do other things in these other pillar areas as we move forward. There's a number of benefits to being a member. You can help mentor others and be mentored depending on where you are in on your leadership journey. And again, the folks who are part of this come from all walks of life, all different backgrounds and cultures. And we also, I want to say, we welcome men as well as women. And I'm not sure I said too much of that up front today. I usually do, but we have men in our international group because these qualities are obviously in men and women. And so we do have men, although we do highlight women, and we're focusing on women because we feel we're the ones who need to be elevated, and our skills and qualities need to be elevated. So some of the benefits of membership are being a featured guest at our monthly meetings. Now we have blogs. So we'll be asking members to submit guest blogs. You could co-facilitate one of the pillar or the pods that we have. You could facilitate a workshop. We're going to be bringing on stream more workshops, and they're going to be, as a member benefit, there'll be a better price for you. And obviously you're going to champion authentic feminine leadership. That's part of what we do. And here's some more benefits. Connecting with this global community. We actually have an annual conference. The one this year was like 3 days long because we moved from country to country, and all the countries got to submit a proposal. And so I went to our members and said, anybody got some ideas as to what we could do in half an hour virtually. And so we got to present and hear from women all over the world, contribute to these impactful events and projects. For example, like the Mother Earth Ambassador Project, experience firsthand the power of collaborative partnerships. You may meet some people. Certainly when we work together, you'll see we very much value collaboration. That's how we work in the board. That's how we work in doing projects. That's how I work. I've been facilitating multi-stakeholder groups for many, many years. That's kind of my thing, one of my things. And often people may meet other women in the group, even at the breakouts, and you may end up forming some sort of partnership, and whether it be a business one, a workshop you do, who knows? But there are a number of amazing women that are currently part of the group. Enjoy leadership development and mentoring. We have a Women in Leading in Change global leadership development program that involves not only participants from all over the world, but also faculty. And I'm honored to be the faculty that teaches a module on authentic feminine leadership. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of things here apply to speak on regional and global stages. Showcase your expertise. We've already said about that, and member pricing on events, courses, and more. So we're launching something new as a member benefit starting February 2nd. It's going to focus, they're called collective wisdom circles, maximum 10 people. I'll be facilitating the first go around, 3 circles once a month between the meetings, focusing on this one. It will focus on dealing with change and uncertainty personally and professionally. We believe that all our members are wise. So it's an opportunity to share your wisdom in a very safe space. So everything that's said in the group stays in the group, similar to like a mastermind. So that's an opportunity as a member to be able to, we have a few spots left for this that is kicking off on the 2nd of February. So if you're interested in learning more and want to join us, that's our URL at FWOCcanada.com. I apologize for keeping you a couple of minutes over here. I think I might be a couple of minutes over. We had so much going on. I didn't want to cut the discussion. Our February monthly meeting, our monthly meetings are the 3rd Wednesday of every month from 4:30 Pacific, 7:30 Eastern to 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, as today. And the one for next month is, we're really excited to have Jane Finnett, and she's going to focus on how empowered women empower women. And she's the founder and executive director of the Coaching Fellowship, which is actually an organization that mentors and coaches young women who are leading up social change and social change organizations in their various countries. And she's recently written this book, Unlocked: How Empowered Women Empower Women. She's also a leadership expert, amongst other things. So she'll be our guest on February 16th. So, and if you want to register, we already have the URL for that up here, but it's going to be on Eventbrite, and as of within the next day or so, we'll have it on our new website under events. So I encourage you to check out our new site. And I will add, as with anything new on websites, although we tested before we went in live and after, there may be something that you may come up against. So if you find something that isn't working, please email me personally directly to Pamela at femalewaveofchange.com, because, you know, I want to know the truth. And if something isn't working, please let us know. So thank you very much. Again, thank you so much, Cranla, for sharing your wisdom with us this evening. So enjoyed hearing and learning from you. Thank you, everybody, all your participants, for being here and for sharing your wisdom and your great questions. So hope to see you again soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Pamela. Nice to meet everyone. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.